Over the last week, the sale price of some high-end cards really took a tumble. Should we all be scared? We'll tell you what we think next in Cards on the Table. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome back to Cards on the Table, our fast-paced talk show where we cover a variety of important topics around the world of sports cards. And before I get into it with these two gentlemen today, let me remind you that at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, Thursday night, I am going live on Whatnot to give away this box of 2020 Prism basketball thanks to our official wax sponsor, Midwest Cards. If you don't have a Whatnot account yet, what you need to do is either scan the QR code on your screen right now or look in the show notes, look at the description of this show and click that link to get your special Whatnot account and your $10 in free credit. If you are already on Whatnot, then simply look for Sports Card Investor on Whatnot at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Join me live for a chance to win that box. Okay, guys, let's get into our first topic today. This is an important topic. We're talking about the high end of the sports card market. Over the last year, we've seen sports card prices fall on the low end of the market. Obviously, commonly printed base cards have gotten beat up quite a bit. We've seen the middle of the market be a little bit soft, but the high end, for the most part, has remained strong. In some cases, high-end cards have gone up in value a lot over the last year, while the lower end of the market dipped. However, we're seeing some potential cracks in the foundation, not across all high-end cards, but across certain high-end cards. And what brought this to my attention was over the weekend at Golden Auctions, some of the really big, important Grail basketball cards that I track sold for less, in some cases significantly less than they had sold for recently. You had cards like the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10 card, which sold for $228,000 over the weekend. That was the lowest sale since I bought the card for $228,000, the same price, June of 2021. You also had Kobe Bryant's Topps Chrome Refractor PSA 10 sold for $156,000. The last two sales, which were very recent, were at $168,000, so a little decline in that card. And you had the LeBron James Topps Chrome Black Refractor PSA 10. Of course, these are all of their rookie cards, in this case 2003, sell for $144,000. That one was a particularly large fall because it had last sold back in March for $240,000, dropped in price almost $100,000 over the course of a couple of months. Now, there were some other high-end cards that still did well. We've had other high-end cards still set record prices, but these ones were problematic. What do we make of this T-Pott? How concerned should we be?
Oh, we say what goes up must come down, right? And we talk about the high-end market being safe. We use that word sometimes, safer in the high-end market. But we don't mean safe in the near term. There's always high points and there's always low points. We can talk about the stock market and the S&P and the housing market all being safe over time. We know these things go up.
And they've all been down a lot since the first of this year. You can't
100%.
You can't really talk about these cards being down without saying, crypto down, stock market down, real estate has been hot, maybe starting to cool off.
And if you had bought a house back in 2007 at the height of the market, unfortunately, a lot of people lost a lot of money in the equity in their homes back then when it all came crashing down in 2008. In most cases, those houses have now recovered and recovered handsomely since then. Those types of markets track 3.5% on average over time. You see the same thing typically with high-end cards over time. But I think there's an important distinction too. You highlighted actual high-end like GOAT caliber cards. This isn't the same as a LaMelo Ball and TRPA or something like that, which could go to the floor if he doesn't pan out. So I think that's really important. But we've seen over the last year, as this overall market correction has happened, a lot of people trying to kind of ride it out. Certain cards weren't even hitting the market. Dealers were holding things back and not putting them out at shows. Now those things are starting to come out. The feedback that we got from Zach and other people at Dallas is that there were cards being put out, but still at prices from 4 to 6 months ago. So a little bit of dealer denial or trying not to take a total huge loss. Other people are starting to liquidate and send to consignment. And I think if you're high on some of these cards, maybe you're even doing the same thing with a broader portfolio and taking some L's. But I think there's still an opportunity to buy into some of the more important cards at discounts right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of these cards are discounted for sure. The question is the buying opportunity now, or are they going to drop a little further, presenting a buying opportunity at some point? Hammer, your thoughts on this?
So my first thought was that I did realize that these three cards in particular were basketball cards,
Yeah.
and we are looking at the end of the basketball season. This is one of the rare postseasons that we don't see LeBron James really being a star. So I do think there's some effect there. And I also think, this is the time of year where there's a lot of families that are getting ready to go vacation, to go do different things, especially with the fact that we've had a pandemic going on for 2 years where maybe some of those things weren't able to actually happen. So I think a combination of prices coming back down, things opening back up, people being able to do things, I think that's why we're seeing some of this. And I also think that when it comes to some of the higher end stuff, people are gearing up for the National in about, 60 days?
Yep.
So I think some people might be seeing some of those sales and go, you know what? Let me just hold off. Maybe I can go to the National, get card in hand, and not have to deal with buying online. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not too worried at the moment.
Yeah, so I spent about $200,000 in this golden auction over the weekend. I didn't buy these cards, although I actually bid on the Kobe and the LeBron and was probably the second bidder on both of those cards. I was just kind of in there seeing if I could get what I felt was like a particular steal on those cards. I did actually buy a box of 1986 Fleer sealed, because I got that for about 25% off, where it had sold for most recently. And so I was happy getting that sealed wax at a discount. I still have tremendous confidence in where the market's going to be 5 years from now. With Fanatics and the money infusion, the marketing infusion, all the new people coming in, that I believe all of that will happen. I have tremendous confidence that all of these cards will be significantly more valuable in 5 years. The next 3 months, the next 6 months, I'm not so sure. And the economic uncertainty right now, the stock market going up and down every day, crypto down, NFTs down, real estate cooling off, it does make me feel like there might not be a reason today to go all in on these types of cards, but I'm closely monitoring. There will become a point in time. It may be 3 months from now, it may be 6 months from now, and who knows, maybe it's next month and maybe things start to pick back up again heading into the National. There will become a point in time where I feel like, okay, I think we've hit the bottom for the moment, and then I'm going to try to infuse quite a bit of cash on these types of cards at that moment. It is, though, impossible to ever perfectly time the market, which is why I went ahead and bought some stuff this past weekend, because, I don't know if this is the low point. I don't know if it's going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. I don't know. I am confident, though, in the long term. So for that reason, I'm going to continue to make selective purchases as I can on the high end, find opportunities, and if it starts to go down more and more, maybe make more purchases. Eventually, hopefully, I kind of ladder in, and eventually, hopefully, everything goes back up. All right, we're out of time on that topic. Appreciate the discussion. Let's talk about something that's happening in the sports card market on a more micro level, I should say. I want to talk about Mike Trout, because this last week, T-Pott, on the Market Movers channel, you did an interesting kind of overall analysis of the sports card market. It's a great video. We're going to put the link up. If you guys haven't seen his video, his overall analysis of the sports card market, using the Market Pulse in Market Movers to take a look at all these different segments of the market, go watch that video as soon as this one's done. But one name in particular that was an interesting one that you covered in that video was Mike Trout, because his cards have been on the decline, even though his team's doing well, he's doing well, or has been doing well generally. There's more excitement around him perhaps than there's been the last couple of years where he's been injury plagued. What do you make of the Mike Trout market right now?
Yeah, I mean, there were comments on the video. I called out, I started at a high level, macro level, zoomed in on specific players, and Trout was one of them. And I said, look, this really surprises me. It would surprise me if he was flat. I think when I was doing the video, he was showing down 8% over the last 30 days since really the season sort of started. And he's having a fantastic season. And it's not like there was a big price run up before the season on his cards, and that's why they've cooled down. We see that happen a lot. That's not what happened with his prices. He's down. Now, there were comments like, well, what do you expect? There's a recession, there's inflation overall, crypto and everything's down. What do you expect? Well, Aaron Judge is up. A lot of players are up. If you look over the last 30 to 60 days, many cards are up. So there are hot players like Judge. He's at like a 2.7 WAR on the season right now. Trout's at 3, second only to Manny Machado. Right now, if it was MVP voting, those two guys are the front runners. And Trout's killing it. He's got more, long-term value. Now the Yankees are a torrid, absolutely hot start, killing it in the AL. But I'm still looking at Trout and kind of saying, like, what's the story here with him? Because we've seen his prices continue to come down and come down and come down, and they still haven't rebounded. I think what's going on is that there were sort of these prepaid expectations with his stats 2 to 3 years ago, where he was on this trajectory to be an all-time great. Many people throwing or daring to throw around greatest of all time, true GOAT, like greatest of all time. And then the shortened COVID season happened, and then an injury-shortened season happened, and he only played like 65, 70 games total, and had a 3.6 combined WAR over 2 seasons when he's averaged 8 to 10 per season over the years. That's where you start looking at these aggregate stats. He was on a fast track, surefire to 100 WAR, 100 plus. Now he's 30 years old at 79. He is having an absolutely torrid start to the season. But I think people are waiting to see, does he get back into that? Does he win another MVP? Does he win a World Series, which I think would help bolster his long-term value? I just think there's a little bit more like people still worried about injury maybe.
It's interesting. Are you a believer in Mike Trout's cards right now? What are your thoughts, Hammer?
At the end of the day, I think he was overvalued. I mean, if you look early 2021, his 2011 Topps update PSA 10 was at around $8,000, almost as high as that.
And by the way, that's a high population card. That's
Correct.
over 5,000, I believe, population.
So,
it's a big number.
So I think there was just a lot of people really excited to see what Mike Trout is going to turn into. And just to give a comparison, Albert Pujols' Topps traded 2001 PSA 10 has a pop of around 500, and it's going for roughly the same price right now as Mike Trout's. And Pujols is currently 17 home runs away from hitting 700 and also has 2 World Series championships. So as much as I love the WAR guys and I love hearing the WAR talk, I don't have too much things that I can remember from Mike Trout's career right now. You have a couple All-Star MVPs, but I can go to Pujols and say, Game 5, 2005 against the Houston Astros, hits the ball for Brad Lidge. Game 5 of the World Series in 2011, hits 3 home runs against the Rangers. And those were all in winning efforts. Maybe not in 2005, but in 2011. So
I mean, Trout's been the best player in baseball for the last decade when he plays.
Totally, but the price is telling me that he
multiple runners.
Totally, but in comparison to Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera, guys who have the rings and have the statistics, it's just overflated.
I love making those comparisons generation to generation, and we see that a lot. I think you're right with the Pujols. Maybe the question in him is he more undervalued than Trout is overvalued? But I definitely see your point.
Yeah. Ken Griffey Jr. never really had that moment either. I mean, he never had the postseason, big success moment, winning the championship, anything like that. And yet we fondly look back at him all these years later as the greatest player of his, time period. And so, Trout, I think, is that. But at the same time, I totally get what you're saying. And I think that's an interesting question. Is it that Trout's overvalued, or is it that these other guys are undervalued? That's a good question. At the moment, the market is speaking, and the market's telling us that Trout must have been a little overvalued because his cards are on the way down.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see where they go from here. If you guys want your own look at the sports card market and to look at undervalued cards and overvalued cards and that type of thing, check out Market Movers. All right, guys, you can try out Market Movers free for 7 days. Just use promo code TRIAL. Go to sportscardinvestor.com, click Market Movers in the main menu bar, promo code TRIAL. Let's get to our next topic. This was quite the story over the last week. A trading card manufacturer, Leaf, sued a player, CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys, for not returning his signed cards, his autographed cards, on time. And I think not just on time, but I think he was belligerently late with returning those cards. At least that's what the allegation is. And so they sued him. Now, the update to that story is apparently he's now returned the cards. And Leaf actually thanked him on Twitter and said, we've got the cards and that type of thing. So I'm assuming this lawsuit will be dropped, I assume. But this is apparently the first time that a trading card manufacturer has sued a player for failing to, sign their cards in a timely manner and send them back. Is this a good thing for the hobby that they did this and then got this response out of CeeDee Lamb, or is this not the right thing for a manufacturer to be doing? Hammer, curious to get your take.
I love it, to be honest with you. I think these players should be held accountable, especially if they sign a contract that says they need to sign a certain amount of cards. And it makes me think that Fanatics is looking at the situation and going, hey, I wonder if there's ways that we can improve this once we sort of take over to make sure that this relationship between the player and the card companies is very smooth. So we don't have situations where maybe the first year guys start signing and then after that they just decide, I'm not going to sign. And then from there, nobody really decides to make any sort of changes and then they'll just move on and go to a next player. So I'm happy to see, especially for a guy who's not a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, to be kind of thrown a fit like this. I'm happy to see that he signed those cards and gave them back, and I hope to see more like that moving forward for players who don't want to be a part of signing autographs on cards.
Yeah, it was interesting when this happened because my first instinct was, heck yeah, that they did that. I'm hold these players accountable. As somebody who has, I don't know, probably 20 unfilled Panini redemptions that have sat there for a year plus, I'm like, get these autos back. Don't let these players do this. But there was actually a lot of backlash towards Leaf online. If you read the comments, a lot of people saying they shouldn't have done this, and a lot of people blaming Leaf, saying that Leaf never should have put redemptions in the product in the first place. That they didn't have the immediate ability to fill. So that's kind of an interesting slant. What are your thoughts, T-Pott?
They had a contract. I think I heard, that this is actually just Brian Gray and Jerry Jones have a beef with each other, and he's trying to. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry to me. You sign a contract, you make an agreement. At the end of the day, the final step to hold somebody accountable to a contract is sometimes to file a lawsuit and go after them that way. That's why you sign contracts. So I don't otherwise care too much about this in general. I'm kind of ambivalent about the whole thing. Like, we don't have a lot of visibility to what these manufacturers are up against. There's always two sides to every story. I'm sure CeeDee Lamb would have his, and I'm sure Leaf would have theirs. But we know that there were big delays on LaMelo's redemptions. We know, obviously, like you said, Panini's got just tons of unfilled things. And when we're all lambasting and crying out like, Panini, fill my redemption, if the athlete's not returning the cards, like, what are they supposed to do? They got to try to execute, and draw action on. Now, I don't know if I would say CeeDee Lamb really signed the cards. All he did was put a circle on the card. Yeah. And that's the bigger piece to me is, while they're at it, how about start mandating when you sign the contract that you have a signature and not just a chicken scratch or an initial. So
good luck with that. I agree with you. I love that.
Let's do it.
But good luck getting
you want to
athletes
get paid,
to agree.
Bonuses, something. Yeah.
All right, one more important topic today, guys. And by the way, these topics that we're discussing, they come from you in the comments on this YouTube video. So take a moment right now, put a comment as to what you want us to discuss next show. Do that right now. This next one is about grading and specifically about BGS. They just reopened their economy service. $35 if you want your card with subgrades, $25 with no subgrades. I think it's maybe a 3 to 4 month type turnaround on these cards. Maybe it's a little longer than that, I'm not sure, but somewhere in that nature. They're not changing their labels, they're not changing their slabs, they're just simply opening up this less expensive service offering. Yeah. Is this enough to get BGS back to the number 2 spot in the grading world? Because I feel like they've slipped in the perception of many, and SGC meanwhile has quite risen up, and I think many would argue now SGC is the number 2. Does this get BGS back where they used to be?
I definitely think it's a step in the right direction now that you can get, economy subs for $35 with subs. But I still think there's more work that needs to be done. Their website from a user experience is an absolute nightmare. So I think that's something they need to improve so then people who maybe want to get their cards graded can do it in a very easy fashion. But I think also what it's going to come down to is that turnaround time. I think if they can get that turnaround time I think it's 90 to 120 days, but if they can get it before then or around that date, I do think it may affect SGC and where they currently stand, and you might start to see more people flock to BGS. But I think the turnaround times is going to be a huge aspect of this.
And are you now flocking to BGS? Are you preparing your submissions on this news and walking down to the post office today to ship off a whole thing to BGS?
I am not. And this is nothing against our friends at Beckett. We have great relationships there and a lot of great people working there, but things have really fallen off. I unfortunately didn't have the best experience on my one submission I did before they closed down, and I think things have really fallen off. They have an incredible brand legacy. It's going to take more than opening at a rate that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm doing a data diving into this more, specifically on this, and just in terms of secondary market value, SGC 10s are now 1-to-1 with BGS 9.5s. We know PSAs are selling for 1.5 to 2 to 3x what a BGS 9.5 is. PSA $50, like 3 to 4 week, or no, what are they at? 4 to 6, 8 weeks, something like that. Turnaround on standard. SGC is at like 16 days for $25 to $27. Why would I send to Beckett? Wait, assuming if they even hit the 90 to 120 day, which I don't know that I have a lot of confidence in because they didn't come anywhere close to what that commitment was the last time for me. Overall, I just think it's really dicey. I think I'd go SGC for certain cards like I have been, and PSA for the higher end ones, and I hope Beckett can get back into it. You mentioned their website. Dr. Jim Beckett actually on his podcast, he's a few steps removed from their operations now, had a guest on to give sort of a blunt, almost consultative assessment of Beckett, and that was one of his big critiques is your website needs to be built. This is a step in the right direction. Grading cards and opening up for it is a step in the right direction, but I'm not
a fan of the subgrades, huh? Not a fan of the subgrades.
I don't really
it sounds
care about
like.
the subgrades.
CSG's not doing them anymore, right? So Beckett's your show if you want subgrades.
Yeah.
I still like Beckett. I agree. Website, turnaround times, all that stuff. I like them for patch cards. I think it's the best solution for patch cards, personally. And I like them for cards that you think would 10 with PSA, but maybe have some type of flaw that's fairly obvious. I like them for that because I like the subgrades and the fact you could show, hey, this card's got great centering, it's got great edges, it's got a great surface. Unfortunately, it's got a corner issue, but that is exposed in the subgrades, whereas just PSA is just going to give you one overall grade and you're not going to know what's wrong. So I think there's some things to be said there, but at the same time, they definitely have to get things in order. By the way, if you want to grade your cards, whether it is through BGS or PSA or SGC or CSG, your best way to do that is through our grading service here at Sports Card Investor. Go to sportscardinvestor.com and click grading in the main menu bar. It's awesome because you get free professional pre-screening. Our team will actually look at your cards. This is in conjunction with the great people at GotBaseballCards.com. They'll actually look at your cards and check them out and let you know if there's flaws and therefore they should not be graded. Saves you money, free shipping as well. Again, go to sportscardinvestor.com, click grading in the main menu bar. Save yourself some money and some time. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thank you, T-Pott. Thank you, Hammer. Let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about next week. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe. We'll see you back soon with our next one. Take care.